What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, August 31st, 2017, last day in the month here, and boy, oh boy, sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday. And I have a quick little program note. As you're probably aware, we have the website is a 7-day-a-week operation. Claire and I both work on it, and the radio show as well. I hardly ever take any time off, but in this case, Claire and I are really feeling like we need a rest. And so we're going to be taking the Labor Day weekend off, including tomorrow, and just walk away from this and just try and recharge our batteries here. Go out and actually remind ourselves that we live in Hawaii. So tomorrow will be a best of, Monday will be a best of, and then we'll be back live on Tuesday. But we're here today right now. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room and ready to answer the phone. Let's get on into it. Now, obviously, Hurricane Harvey continues to be a major problem. They're beginning to start inventorying what's actually still working in the wake, and they're looking at the ports all along the Gulf. Corpus Christi is still closed. Victoria is still closed. Freeport is closed. Galveston is closed. Houston and Texas City is closed. Port Arthur is open. Gulfport, Pascagoula, Mobile, Pensacola, and New Orleans are open, but there is a qualifier there because the Coast Guard captain of the port in Corpus Christi is saying that the port of Corpus Christi is now in a condition called Modified Zulu, which means ships, boats with less than a 20-foot draft are allowed to go into the harbor now as long as they understand that the navigation aids may have been destroyed or relocated in the storm. So it's extreme caution is very much warranted there. All right, apparently we have a caller on the line already. Ping Pong from China. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. What's going on?
Oh, wow. I'm a Canadian teacher. I've been living in China for 11 years, and I got to tell you, I've been listening to you for the last 6 years. My students and I, we've raised $8,888 for your cause, your network. You are a classroom number one in my teaching here in China. Can you believe it?
Yeah, that's rather amazing. What part of China are you in?
I'm in northern China, and I was when I got through here. All this North Korea. Nobody's worried about North Korea up here. Okay, everybody knows. Easy peasy, Japanesey, everything's going to be okay. It's always the same old stuff. I had another word for that, but yeah, it's just the same old stuff.
Okay.
But, thank you so much. Anyways, I wanted to mention that although China seems to be demonized a lot, I've been walking the streets of China for 11 years as a teacher, as a Canadian teacher, and whether it be 2 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing wrong. Nobody's going. If anybody comes up to you, you think a stranger's going to come. Oh, do you know where you're going to go? Where are you going to go? Can I get you a taxi? Something's wrong with the idea back home that everybody thinks that this part of the world is so dangerous. It's not. It's not at all.
Well,
Great Wall.
I was going to ask you the question. I mean, how far are you from Shanghai? Because that's where my father's family is from.
Okay, well, I'm way up. I'm up actually in Harbin.
Okay, all right.
We're on the northern border of Russia, and we're actually east of North Korea. Chung Shan is on of China and North Korea.
Okay, I know right where you
right
are.
On the, yeah, Pektu, that's what the Koreans say. We say is Taishan, heaven.
Yes.
Heavenly lake. But I'm just starstruck right now that I'm talking to you. I'm just so happy to talk to you.
Yeah. Can I give you a piece of advice?
Thank you very much,
Don't
Mike.
be don't be starstruck. I'm just a guy. I got caught up in some strange circumstances in life, and that's how I wound up here.
I know you're just a guy, and I know you don't like to be talked over. I've been listening to you for so many years, but I've been listening to you for so many years. Thank you, VPN. Thank you, VPN. And my wife is telling me, like, oh, shut up, Eric.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm very glad to get a confirmation that we're not being blocked in China, because we are being blocked so many other places, mostly inside the United States right now. But apparently, our international reach is really doing quite well. And so, I thank you for the phone call. I thank you for the very, very kind words here, and I'm glad that we're...
And let's say thank you to VPN, because your words are being spread all over the world because of VPN. So God bless for the VPN.
Well,
and thank you, Mike, for everything you do and everything you say. And, wow, you're just... you've been keeping me informed all over this world. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, and tell your students I sent them a personal hello.
God bless you. Take care.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for the phone call. Bye-bye.
Claire, God bless you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, that was an interesting phone call here. And we're going to do a quick little shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're still talking about the aftermath of what happened in Texas, and it is absolutely horrible, and we're starting to see the economic repercussions are starting to manifest themselves. To the best of my knowledge, nobody has actually done a survey yet of the oil drilling platforms in the Gulf. How many are still where they're supposed to be? How many are still floating? How many may have been sunk? How many leaks there may be going on here? And apparently the nation's largest oil refinery had to shut down as the floodwaters took it over. And basically all of these closures together represent now about 25% of U.S. refining capacity. The numbers keep going up. Tuesday it was 15%, then yesterday it was 20%, now it's 25%, and gas prices are already headed up. I'm getting emails from all over the country. People in Florida are saying, yeah, the gas prices are already going on up. So if you have a large tank on your vehicle, top it off today. If you have gas cans, top them off today. If you are a person who is looking to get your heating oil and diesel for the winter, you've got the large tanks, now's the time to make sure they're filled up, because there's going to be a major shortage and some serious price increases. In fact, I even got an email from somebody who was doing that, was getting his winter's fuel oil, and he called down yesterday, and when he called back today to arrange delivery, and the guy at the oil place said, oh boy, the prices are just going right through the roof, and I'm still going to give you yesterday's price because that's when you called, but I'm already losing money on this deal. So yeah, it's going to be really ugly. In fact, a lot of people are already calling this the worst energy crisis the United States has seen in decades. And making things even worse, some of these major pipelines carrying fuel from Texas to the East Coast have been shut down. Apparently, Colonial shut down its main diesel and jet fuel line on Wednesday evening, and it's planning on closing its gasoline line sometime today. And the main line carries 1.4 million barrels of gasoline from the Gulf Coast to the East Coast and the North every single day. Every single day. And the 1.4 million barrels traveling through the line provides 58 million gallons of gasoline to the East Coast every single day. That's not flowing anymore. And they don't have enough tanker trucks to cover the shortfall. There are going to be gas lines at the gas stations. This is an epic disaster. Now, Shell and Exxon are now acknowledging that their Texas refineries have had to release hazardous chemicals into the air as they got flooded. And unfortunately, they're talking about Shell said they released 100 pounds of benzene, which is a carcinogen, and 100 pounds of toluene. So, yeah, this is just really ugly. And it also underscores some of the toxic side effects of a petroleum-based economy. Maybe coming out of this, we'll start looking at more diversified energy production. I mean, the people who've got solar cells and windmills, they're set. They're going to be looking really, really good. Of more concern has to do with the Galveston National Laboratory. This is part of the University of Texas Medical Branch, and they run a laboratory on Galveston Island, which has been hit by the storm. And this is a laboratory that contains some very serious pathogens, viruses, insects, microbes, and it is a BSL-4, Biosafety Level 4 laboratory. And if you know anything at all about biological warfare, BSL-4, that's the top. That's where they keep things like Ebola and other diseases, high transmission, high secondary communicability, no known cure, no known vaccines. And so they're very concerned about what may have happened to that facility as well. Now, remember that chemical plant that we were talking about, Arkema? So far, it has had 2 explosions as water gets into these very anhydrous perchlorate compounds. And they're not really powerful explosions, but they're enough to where you say, oh, there's been something happen, followed by an ongoing fire that is releasing toxic smoke into the air. There have been 2 so far. They are expecting 8 more. And here's where the irony comes on in. Apparently, Texas Republicans helped this plant lobby against safety rules that right now, if they were in place, would have prevented the water getting into these chemicals and starting off these fires. So it's another case of cutting the safety corners to please the money junkies. And then when it all falls apart, well, the taxpayers will cover the mess. Apparently, the looting has gotten completely out of control. And we're starting to see signs show up on houses over there. You loot, I shoot, stay away. And apparently, not only is there looting, there are now armed robberies taking place, where these armed gangs are going into these homes where they know there are people still there, but they're going in armed, figuring they'll just overwhelm them. And what is it about these disasters? It brings out the best and the worst in people. And there's been apparently a lot of looting of abandoned shopping centers, empty homes. Apparently the Houston Apple store was broken into. Somebody just shot out the front door, went on in and helped themselves to a bunch of apples. Houston and Department of Homeland Security officials are warning residents of fake agents who are going around claiming to be from the Department of Homeland Security and telling people that they need to evacuate. There's more water coming, and yes, there is more water coming. But you need, if somebody does that, you have a right to demand to see a badge and an ID and make sure it's really them. Because what these looters are doing is they'll have somebody dress up in a suit and go up and say, we're from the Department of Homeland Security, you've got to vacate. Everybody panics, they get in their car, they drive off, the looters walk on in and help themselves to everything that's in the home. Somebody wrote in to tell me there was a little story about when Texas was fighting for its independence. And General Santa Anna was coming north from Mexico. There were people who ran around to homes in Texas saying Santa Ana is only a mile away, and everybody would panic and leave, and they'd go on in and help themselves to the property. So I guess looting has a long and glorious history among the Texans. There's also, unfortunately, a lot of phonies, phishing scams going on. Apparently, the cyber criminals are already out there with bogus fundraising links, where they're going on out and they're emailing you saying, we represent the Houston, Texas Rescue Fund or something like that, and then they ask for a donation, during which they steal your credit card details and your personal information, and they're off and running, looting your money as well. Now, I'm going to take a phone call, and then there are a couple of stories that are more on the upside that we need to really give our attention to. Kevin in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there.
I want to put a positive on this whole Hurricane Harvey. You know, the left demonizing and calling everybody racist, this and that and everything. People are coming together and helping one another. Blacks helping whites, whites helping blacks, Hispanics helping whites. You know, it has taken the left, or the narrative from the left that all whites are neo-Nazis and racist, and it's blown up in their face. I mean, even Nancy Pelosi had to come out, and Joe Scarborough had to come out and say Antifa is a completely dangerous and violent organization.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think this has taken their wind out of their sails. This is a blessing in disguise, is what this really is.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. I think we could have lived without it, but you're absolutely right about how it will pull a community together. Because I visited New York City before 9/11 actually happened, and it lived down to every stereotype you've ever seen in movies and TVs about New Yorkers and how rude they are and brusque they are, and everybody's out for themselves. And then later on, Claire and I were invited to go to New York for the 10th anniversary symposium on 9/11. And when we got there, the New Yorkers were very different. And I was talking to one of our taxi drivers, and I said, New York is much nicer here now. And he says, yeah, 9/11 did this. It pulled us all together. And so you're absolutely right. I would expect in the aftermath of this, we're probably going to see a much mellower Houston, like we're seeing a much mellower New Orleans. Not that New Orleans was ever not mellow, because I used to pull in there on the riverboat every once in a while. But yeah, if only we could have these insights without the high cost of property and lives involved as well.
I totally agree. I just wanted to put a positive on this. I mean, yes, tragic. Oh, my God, yes, tragic.
Yep.
But it shows that we Americans actually come together, you know?
Absolutely, and we're seeing stories. I mean, I'm looking at Fox right now, and apparently this Houston family's taken 16 people into their home. So it really is all... it is all starting to happen. Anyway, Kevin, we're going to let you go. We're going to take a call from James in Georgia. James, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just had two comments. I wanted to say that on MSNBC they will not show any rescues, which is kind of strange. And then I was watching Joe Scarborough this morning, and instead of talking about, making donations, he just kept going back and forth about Kushner having trouble refinancing some of his properties. So it just seems like they don't want to bring anything good about what's going on.
Well, they're back to pushing their agenda and attacking Donald Trump and everything. But the reality is that, seeing all these people in Houston coming together of all races and backgrounds, and they're all cooperating together to help each other, it really does explode that whole liberal racial divide agenda.
And Joe Scarborough looked kind of like he's confused or something, Mike. I don't know if he's had a couple of drinks or on some kind of medication, but he just seems kind of disoriented lately. I don't know. I'm having a hard time following him.
Well, I can't say because I haven't actually been watching him myself here, but we'll have to take a look at that. Anyway, anything else, James?
No, sir. Hope you have a great day.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to very quickly try and jam in Steve in California. Steve, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, my wife has a bad habit of turning on the morning news, and actually she watches the Today Show for a little bit. And if I take a gaze at it, I always laugh because the news is so poor and it's just hyped up nothing usually. But they did show some pictures in Houston. And what they did not say is how effective the Cajun Navy was in helping the citizens there in that dilemma. And they definitely didn't. They never mentioned the civilian forces that they have down there right now. They're working very well together in helping these people. And
okay, Steve,
which would then expose why the government...
Steve, we got to take a break. Do not hang up. I'm going to come back to you after the commercial break. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Steve in California, and we're talking about some of the upside of what's going on, about how these disasters can actually pull communities together and significantly change literally the complexion of that culture for years to come. And it's a shame that we need these kind of disasters to do that. But I'm in agreement. I think that we're going to start seeing coverage of the positive side of the response to Hurricane Harvey, because it absolutely demolishes the liberal narrative that there's a race war in this country. And I remember the other day when there was that photo of a white Texan in an airboat helping black people into the airboat, getting them out of the water. And this liberal snowflake goes off about, oh my God, there's a Confederate flag on the steering vanes of that whole thing. And it's just like, where's your sense of proportion here, people? You know, we're seeing these pictures of white guys helping, black children out of the flood waters. I'm just waiting for the corporate media to say, white people are stealing black children. They're stealing, just to try and keep the race baiting going. But it's falling apart. It really is.
No, I agree. I totally agree. It shows us that when people work together, and we can work together, we don't need bigger government, we need less government, because they're very ineffective in what they do. Everything they kind of touch. I remember what my father used to say, and I'm going to put it in politically correct terms, anything the government puts their hands on, as you would say, turns to bovine excrement. They don't do anything well.
No.
But this is a classic example of the Cajun Navy getting together. These people are well organized with their boats, and they're out there doing a fabulous job, saving lives, helping people. And the United States government is standing there with their arms crossed, trying to figure out where to start. They're so behind.
And the Cajun Navy, they're risking their life because they're being shot at by the looters. To try and get them to stay away so that they can go on looting the houses and everything. And the Cajun Navy isn't really interested in dealing with the looters. They're just trying to get the survivors out.
That's it, Michael. Hey, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And before we go back to the phones, I do want to get some of these other stories out because these are on the positive side. This shows you how people can really do the right thing in these circumstances. So anyway, there is a bakery in Houston, Texas, El Bolillo Bakery, and they were working the night shift Friday, and they realized they could not leave the shop. They were surrounded by water, but they still had power, and they still had all their supplies. So what did they do? They started baking loaves of bread to give to the flood victims. And they had 4 bakers there. They used up a ton of flour and just made as many loaves of bread as they could to just give to the survivors. That, I think, is very, very positive. Anheuser-Busch, basically at their facility at Cartersville, Georgia, they switched it over. It's not making beer right now. They're using the same machinery to put clean, safe drinking water into cans. And they've got 15,000 gallons of drinking water now in cans on its way to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Arlington, Texas. That's doing the right thing. Donald Trump is going to donate $1 million to the Texas recovery, and we're talking out of his own wallet. Not the government aid, not the taxpayer money. Trump went into his own wallet, $1 million worth heading on down to the Texas recovery. So that's a good thing. Now, Hurricane Harvey has dumped an estimated 15 trillion gallons of water on Texas. It's looking to be the most expensive natural disaster in U.S. history. It's time to start cutting costs somewhere else in the budgets, such as, the wars. I mean, 16 trillion, if you think about it, that's a lot of money. But the Pentagon, remember, they lost 7 trillion. If we could just find where that went, we're well on our way to recovering from Hurricane Harvey. So come on, Pentagon, tell us, what did you do with that $7 trillion, huh? It's got to be out there somewhere, and I know you were trying to find it, and that airplane that hit the Pentagon flew around the Pentagon to plow into the offices of the accountants trying to find where that money went. But you know where it is. I'm sure that you do. It's time to cough it up for the good of the nation. We'll be back with more phone calls. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we get back to the phones, I want to get some more of this news out here. East Texas residents are being warned to get out now. River levels could rise to 82 feet. The Army may be forced to open the reservoir floodgates on those 2 reservoirs to the east of Houston that were built to deal with, actually built in the aftermath of an earlier flood, but obviously weren't built high enough and tall enough. And there is concern that one of them may actually collapse. These are earthen dams, just like the Oroville Dam. If they overtop, they will erode away. Another story, this one coming out of government slaves. Apparently, they're saying that Hurricane Harvey is going to render some parts of Texas uninhabitable for an extended period of time. We saw the same thing with Katrina, where the damage is just so great, you're literally going to have to rebuild from the outside in. The floodwaters may go, but the soil is going to be so sodden and saturated with water, it's going to take a long time before it'll dry out and support any significant weight. And apparently the hospital system down there in Texas is already strained. They've got all these uninsured patients are coming on in. Shelters are struggling to treat the wounded. Now, little thing you got to keep in mind, because you have all these phony Department of Homeland Security agents and everything running on down. The Customs and Immigration and Enforcement people are saying there are no immigration operations going on in the disaster zone. If you are an undocumented immigrant, you are free to avail yourselves of emergency services. Nobody's going to be checking. Nobody's going to be looking. I'm actually in agreement on this one. This is the time to be a humanitarian. But apparently there are some people going around pretending to be ICE to spook people out of their shelter, again, for more looting. All righty, let's see. Bob in Michigan. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind? Bob, are you there?
Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon.
The science is what we're talking about. They keep saying on the NPR stations locally here that this hasn't happened in 500 to 1,000 years. Well, the problem is the coal-fired power plant or the piston engine weren't even invented 500 or 1,000 years ago.
You're talking about how Michael Mann came on out and said that Hurricane Harvey was caused by human-caused global warming. And again, it's a load of nonsense. There have been major hurricanes before, and the indications are it's always been a feature of planet Earth. And, of course, the carbon Nazis like to claim that as the Earth gets warmer, the storms get worse, but that's not how they work. What causes a storm is a temperature differential, and you can get a major storm by upper atmosphere cooling as well as by surface warming. And again, look at those outer gas giant planets, temperatures hundreds of degrees below zero and storms the size of the entire planet Earth.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because in the years, I believe it was between like 900 and 1300, the west side of Greenland was forested, and now they're covered with ice.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, when it was actually starting to get warmer back in the 1990s, they started to find the remains of Viking settlements as the ice retreated. But now the ice is gaining again, and we're heading back into a new mini ice age, it looks like. Anyway, Bob, thank you very much.
Correct. And the whole northern tier of the United States, we've had a very cold summer, much below average. This is right here in the U.S. of A., but nobody even talks about it.
No, because the agenda for the corporate media is to sell that the Earth is getting warmer, it's all the fault of humans, and we have to pay carbon taxes and buy carbon credits to atone. Basically, all of the corporate media, including Bill Nye, the not really science guy, have invested their reputations in promoting Al Gore's warming world. And now they're trying to figure out how can they get out of it with their reputations intact. They're not going to stand there and say, oops, looks like we were wrong. And yet everybody knows that they were. I mean, Al Gore's latest movie is a financial flop. It's an absolute disaster.
Ain't it a treat? Thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing okay.
Yeah, don't forget what Rahm Emanuel says. Never let a good crisis go to waste. So all the liberals in New York and California and Washington, D.C., they don't give a crap what happens to the people in Texas.
No, the first thing they think of is
not even their own liberals.
How can they use this to further their agenda? That's how they think.
Yeah, so I mean, don't forget they'll find any way to demonize Trump, just like Salon.com before the storm happened, where they came out and says, you know, he messed up the effort to help them even before the storm, because these people are worshipers of the state, just like global warming. They believe in an ideology. Doesn't make them, you know, right or wrong. They're worshipers. You know, just like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So there's no like I know we discussed it. There's no like talking to these people. Just to this point, there's just no compromising with these people because they just won't listen to you. You know, I don't know how else we can explain this.
They're fanatics.
You'll never be able. Yeah.
They're fanatics. That's it. They're fanatics.
Mike.
Yeah. And, you know, if you go to my article on ClimateGate, down at the bottom, there's a whole bunch of these quotes, you know, where the lights of the global warming environmental movement are out there saying, yes, we know this isn't real, okay, but we have an agenda to force people to accept a new way of living on planet Earth, and we have to scare them into going along with what we want. They're openly admitting that they're lying, including, there's even a quote from Al Gore saying, yeah, we have to exaggerate this. It's for the greater
Mike,
good.
I know, and Mike, with Antifa, I know they're not like a large group. They're violent, though, but I want people to remember this. The brown shirts had, at the peak, 600,000 thugs. That's an army.
Yes.
You know, that is an army of destruction. So if you don't think Antifa or Black Lives Matter or Black Bloc is like, you know, is scary, if they keep letting it go on, they will be scary because they're violent. You can just see the videos. They're violent, and they'll get worse if they're not stopped now.
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to switch over to Roxanne in Texas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello.
You're on the air.
Hello?
You're on the air.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. Okay. I just wanted to give you some positive notes what's going on down here in Houston. So the other day, the Houston Livestock Rodeo, they called out 17,000 volunteers. They actually have too many right now. The Houston police needed underwear and socks. They got a truckload. The Master Smack, he's going over to with his furniture trucks of water to Beaumont because they lost their water. I think it was yesterday night.
Yes.
Last night, I should say. And then all the first responders around town, anywhere food is free and drink.
Yes.
And then Oklahoma sending power companies, HEB, food trucks up and down the coast for free food. J.J. Watt, he's our football player, and he started a fundraising, and his goal at the time was 200,000. As of today, they have 10 million. So just want to tell you how wonderful this town is and generous. Well, but it's 53 counties that were affected. It isn't just Houston. It's 53 counties.
It's a major swath of the state, and of course, Texans, going on back to the pioneer days, have a very strong sense of community and having to take care of each other. They understand they can't just sit and wait for FEMA or the Red Cross to show up. For one thing, in a disaster of this scale, FEMA and the Red Cross are simply, they don't have the capacity to deal with all of this. And so everybody's recognizing everybody has to get involved to get to get through this thing.
Yes, and the governor basically pushed FEMA back. Let the townspeople, the local boards or the mayors or whatnot, go ahead and do what they got to do. And then actually FEMA just stepped into the picture today, because when FEMA gets in something, that's what happened in Katrina and all of these disasters.
It's what happened out in Southern California during the Northridge quake. They threw a lot of money into the local police and everything, but very little of it actually got down to the people who'd been hurt in the quake.
Yep. Okay, well, you have a great day, and I'll enjoy the show. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, once again, Hurricane Harvey is a lesson in the importance of prepping. It's the best insurance you can have to stay alive and stay safe. The non-preppers right now are hurting badly. Food, water, power, emergency services are failing. The stores are already empty. And it is an object lesson. You cannot rely on the government to take care of you when things go wrong. That's not what they're about. They're about taking money from you and giving it to their friends. And when things really get bad, you're on your own. Now, Best Buy Corporate has now apologized following that story coming on out about how their stores down there in the Houston area were charging $43 for a case of bottled water near Houston. Now, I don't know if they have mandated the price go back down or if they're just sorry that they got caught. Best Buy doesn't have the best reputation in the world. But at least they're acknowledging that the public sees this as being a bit of an issue. And as if they have not already been through enough, Tropical Storm Irma officially became a hurricane today, and it's heading across the Atlantic Ocean. They're predicting a Category 5 storm. Now, right now, the long-term track projection is more into the Caribbean, but of course, those long-term track projections can be very, very inaccurate. We've certainly seen that out here in the Pacific, where the 5-day forecast, it's almost meaningless. But they're going to have to keep an eye on that one. We have another hurricane forming up over in the eastern Pacific, which we're going to be keeping an eye on out here as well, because we're in the middle of our hurricane season. Most of you on the mainland, you got 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter. And here in Hawaii, we only have 2 seasons, tourist season and hurricane season. And not this is going to make anybody feel any better about it, but just in case Houston is feeling particularly put on right now, over in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, monsoons have killed 1,200 people and displaced millions. And I just realized we've got a very good friend who's over in Nepal right now. And I just hope she's okay. I'm going to have to send her a message and see that she's all right, because that's really ugly. Now, getting on back to the domestic news, whether the united response of the people in Houston have anything to do with it or not, it is clear that the wheels have come off the Antifa wagon. They have behaved so abominably and atrociously. Nobody can support them anymore. Nobody wants to identify with them anymore. Nobody wants to be associated with them in any way. And Paul Ryan finally came on out and said, yeah, they're basically a violent left-wing faction, and they're not really doing so good. Even Berkeley, which had been saying it's okay for them to be here, they're changing their tune, and they're saying, look, you guys can't do this anymore. We don't want you here anymore. So it's all coming apart. Now, never one to give up without a fight. The Southern Poverty Law Center is warning of turmoil and bloodshed. And why is that likely to happen? Well, it seems like the Southern Poverty Law Center itself has put out a new map identifying every Confederate monument in the United States, along with every city that's named for somebody in the Confederacy, every school named for somebody in the Confederacy, every street that's named for somebody in the Confederacy, and they're just going to be continuing on this thing about, we've got to change this, we've got to tear this down, we've got to make this go away. Actually, I think the Southern Poverty Law Center ought to be going away. I mean, they keep getting hit with all of these scandals. In fact, somebody just, let's see, okay, yeah, here's a good one. The Southern Poverty Law Center reportedly spent only $61,000 pursuing their stated goal of providing legal services in 2015, despite having over $320 million in assets. So it's another one of these phony little charities. They take in huge amounts of money, they spend very little on their stated purpose, and they're all off to the bank laughing like crazy here. Now, as you know, not too long ago, there was an incident where police discovered a gentleman getting ready to blow up a statue near Herman Park in Houston. And the police arrested the guy, Andrew Schneck, and he was caught with these boxes with what appeared to be duct tape, wires, battery, a timer, and some kind of an explosive liquid. And the story kind of faded away very rapidly, and a lot of people were scratching their head. Well, apparently, according to this story from Blacklisted News, this Andrew Schneck apparently was being monitored by the FBI for several years. They knew he was getting into explosives. They knew he was learning how to make bombs. And it looks like maybe he was one of their assets or about to become one of their assets. Now, Chernovich is out there saying that there is, in effect, a White House coup underway, and Trump is now totally controlled and corralled inside the White House right now. And Chernovich and his sources generally tend to have a pretty good beat on what's going on. So, yeah, it's a palace coup. It's a palace coup. Donald Trump doesn't want to go down this way. He is basically being given no choice, whether he's being threatened, his life threatened, his family's threatened. But it looks like the United States is being ruled by a military junta, because the generals are certainly calling all the shots, at least as far as our foreign policy is concerned. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break here. We've got a caller waiting on the line as soon as we're back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we take some phone calls, just got an email. Apparently, Goal Zero, a solar company based in Utah, has sent truckloads of lights, solar panels, battery packs, and accessories down to Texas and are in the process of giving them out. They've done this for most major events like this in the USA. When the East Coast got hit a while back, same thing. They gave out millions of dollars in hardware so people could see at night and keep their phones charged to keep in contact. So, see, people can do the right thing. And it only underscores what absolute total bastard jerk-offs these looters and scammers and con artists really are. You should be so ashamed of yourselves. All right, let's take some phone calls here. Glenn in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. 2 quick points on relief charities and the palace coup. When it comes to relief charities, since we don't want to have a repeat of the Clinton Foundation debacle with Haiti, it pays to maybe do a little bit of research, a little bit of checking on maybe more regionalized or personalized charities that have some skin in the game. For example, the agency, the corporation I work for, has reported that they have 20 offices affected by Hurricane Harvey, which includes both patient families and employees, and they're going to be starting a fund to which we can donate, so I'll be contributing to that. And things like my parents, like Lutheran Church in San Antonio, like it or not, whether or not, I know you're an atheist, like whether or not, one agrees ideologically with an organization in a humanitarian sense, it's deficient. So, very often, like churches and everything are, have a little more skin in the game in terms of chain of custody and logistics and distribution for the actual resources themselves. And, for example, my local network television affiliates here in Philadelphia, along with a major convenience store chain, are sponsoring a charity. And I would like to think that perhaps an organization that size, which has the media resources to cover what becomes of this money, may maintain a little better chain of custody and handling the logistics and distribution of the stuff.
Well, again, it looks to me like the entire community really is starting to pull together, and that's actually a good thing, because there are so many people involved in fundraising and acquiring materials to assist these people. It makes it more difficult for some single entity to come on in and try and scoop up all the available money the way the Red Cross and the Clinton Foundation did in Haiti. This is very much a different thing. And that's not saying that the scammers aren't going on. Very obviously they are. But because of the massive parallelism of the fundraising donation effort, I think much more of the money is going to get through to the people who really need it.
Oh, hopefully so. And then hopefully we don't have looters showing up at the charity points and hauling the stuff away and then price gouging or scalping it. That's also morally reprehensible, of course. But and as to the palace coup, this whole thing seems to be disclosing the fact that there simply aren't enough good people in the various ranks and institutionalized offices of the government. Not enough good.
I agree. We're going to have to let you go, Glenn. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're going to take another phone call. Don in Iowa. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Subject. Hello.
Hello. You are on the air.
Hello. Yeah, the subject of Antifa. They're finally giving up. Like you say, it looks like everybody, all the establishment, Democrats and Republicans alike, the establishment is finally turning on them. I think what their failure was, and it's amazing, but all these guys that would show up and try to protect the freedom of speech and people and all that, they were heavily armed. They had guns of all kinds, I think. I mean, I've never been to one of those, but it looks to me like some of those guys there were a lot of armed people there, and no bullets were ever fired. So that was what they wanted. They wanted to provoke some of these guys to start shooting, I think.
I didn't see any guns. I didn't see any guns there, but there were a lot of clubs and a lot of, they had things like bottles filled with cement and various other missiles they could throw. But the reason Antifa has failed is they did not project an image that the general population felt any sympathy for or could identify with. And that basically doomed them right from the start. Now, they're out there trying to claim that they're the voice of, the oppressed black people, and they want to tear down the Confederate statues. But when they cross that line into trying to initiate violence and really get it going, that's when they lost their prime demographic, because nobody wants violence in the streets of America anymore. We've already been through the Rodney King riots and the rest of it. And we know that this government has been trying to stir up race riots with all kinds of dirty tricks. They remember when Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, that whole trial was going down, and the whole week before the verdict came on out, they said, if Zimmerman's acquitted, there'll be riots all across America. There'll be riots all across America. And Zimmerman was acquitted, and nothing happened. Because the black people and the white people are smart enough to realize that's exactly what the government wanted them to do. And so we all stayed home.
I was talking about the right-wing people. They had a lot of guns there in Charlottesville. They were armed because it's legal to open carry down there.
Yes.
And nobody ever fired a shot down there.
Yeah, which is another reminder that, gun owners do have a sense of restraint and responsibility.
Yeah, it was amazing amount of restraint. To me, I mean, if somebody pepper sprays you, you actually almost have a legal right to defend yourself. And I mean, it would be debatable whether you can shoot the guy if somebody pepper sprays you right in your face. You right? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Well, I'm not a lawyer either, but I think the presumption would be that, if you're pepper sprayed and you are now blind, you don't know what else is immediately in front of you in terms of a threat. Are they pulling out a knife? Yeah. Or something.
The guy would have a good defense if he had a good defense lawyer and he killed the guy that peppers. Anyway, what I'm saying is, I think that's why they're finally giving up, because of all the restraint these guys showed in all these rallies that they went to when they were armed, and nobody ever killed. None of the right winger guys ever shot. Ever opened fire.
Yeah,
that was good.
That was a very good thing to do. And, of course, the corporate media was trying to present Antifa and Black Lives Matter as the heroes in this situation. And when Trump came on out and said both sides were wrong for resorting to violence, do you remember how they just attacked him? How dare you say that Antifa and Black Lives Matter are wrong to use violence? These are, this is payback for slavery and oppression and all the... And I think the American people just had one of those palm to forehead moments saying, are they really going to try and do this one again?
Yeah, I mean, the people are halfway sensible. The American people, they have common sense, but when you look at people like the guys that work for CNN, you can't have any common sense. They won't give you a job there, right?
Yeah, well, the prime requirement for a job in the corporate media is the ability to stand there with your hair on fire and convincingly claim you cannot smell any smoke.
Okay, I'll let you get back to the news, Mike. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's see. I think that was our last caller. If I'm
Yes.
okay. All right. Fantastic. Here. Now then, in a comparison, and this is directed at Michael Mann, who's out there insisting that human-caused global warming is responsible for this new all-time record hurricane, and as usual, he's completely wrong. It turns out that the Great Galveston Hurricane of 1900 is still the gold medal winner for the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history. And again, everyone tries to use whatever happens for their political agenda, and Michael Mann's agenda is to convince you humans are warming the planet and we're all going to die from these natural disasters unless we stop. But of course, these natural disasters have happened throughout history. Climate does change. It always has. It always will. It was changing long before people got here. It'll go on changing long after we are gone. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And again, we're getting another warning. There are fake Homeland Security and immigration agents who are ordering Houston residents to evacuate so that they can rob their home. And the Department of Homeland Security is saying, demand to see a badge or an ID. And the immigration people are saying they are not enforcing immigration law in the Houston area at this time. That if you're an illegal immigrant in the Houston area, it's safe for you to come on out and seek help. They're not rounding people up. They're not deporting them. And anybody who says, I'm from immigration, you need to leave your house right now, they're con artists. Pick up some of that really heavy debris and throw it at them. Getting on back to politics and corruption here in the United States of America. The Department of Justice, as you know, is going after Menendez on this corruption trial. And apparently a big part of it was that Senator Menendez, traveled on Dr. Melgen's plane on 3 occasions, which were not reported, quid pro quo. Well, Menendez reimbursed Dr. Melgen for the plane flights, retroactively filed the necessary paperwork, and said that was all just fine, and it's all hunky-dory. It turns out that Menendez and his guests had enjoyed more than a dozen flights on Melgen's private jet dating back to 2006, not a single one of which Menendez had paid for or reported on his annual financial disclosure forms. Now he's just trying to say that, oh, it just fell through the cracks. It's amazing here. Now, a little bit of good news here. Okay, remember Jeff Epstein and his Lolita Express and all the underage girls, and he had his mansion in Florida where he got arrested, and he got this wrist slap plea deal for pedophilia and human trafficking. And after he got out of that, he moved on down to the Caribbean and bought himself a little tiny island, and he's got his little pleasure palace down there outside U.S. jurisdiction. Apparently, his plea deal may get canceled because he's not lived up to the terms of it, which means the case could be retried and reopened. And that's going to make a lot of people very, very nervous because lots of very powerful people took advantage of Jeff Epstein's little pleasure palace, including Bill Clinton, one of the royal princes. A bunch of people are going to be very upset, nervous about that one here. Over at NBC, they are now officially in a panic. Yesterday we were in a panic. Today we're officially in a panic. Apparently Megyn Kelly, they tried to give her a new morning show. That is tanking. They can't find an audience for her. She's lost her audience. There's nobody out there who's really interested in listening to anything she has to say. And NBC is contractually obligated to her. They paid a huge amount of money. Reminds me of the movie Network, where at the very end Howard Beale is assassinated because he's got lousy ratings. Megan, you may want to think about wearing a bulletproof vest to the office. Getting into that same situation here. Now, As of tomorrow, we are officially out of the summer box office season, which is when movies make most of their money. There are two box office seasons. There's the summer blockbuster season, and then there's the Christmas blockbuster season. And the summer box office season suffered an historic decline here in the United States of America. There are multiple overlapping factors for that. First and foremost, people just don't have the money to go to a movie theater anymore. Going to a movie theater is not the pleasant experience it was when we were younger, as the theaters are more value engineered, smaller seats, a lot of noisy kids, gouging prices at the snack bar. And the other part of it is that there are so many movies that are just remakes of things we've all seen before. And I'm sure that Al Gore's inconvenient sequel did not help the numbers either. So Hollywood filmmaking did not have a good summer at all here. Let's turn over to the war zones here. For the second day in a row, U.S. airstrikes have killed Afghan civilians. Just keeps on going. It's a horrible, horrible situation. I think the U.S. government is just trying to get us used to the idea that it's okay to kill civilians. They're standing next to the people we want to kill, so they deserve to die. Now, apparently, ISIS is going all in southern Raqqa. As you know, they're basically fighting, moving back toward Deir ez-Zor. And so ISIS is going all in southern Raqqa to try and establish some kind of a line of demarcation, bring the onslaught to a halt. But apparently, ISIS fighters have killed 2 Russian military service members in eastern Hama, and several Syrian soldiers were killed when ISIS repelled their attack toward Ukairebit town. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Chris from somewhere near Las Vegas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, aloha, Michael, and thank you for taking the call. It's my recollection back when they had Katrina and Craig Fugate, who was number 2 in command of FEMA, who proudly proclaimed that he was going to obliterate, using the military, army resources, to bulldoze all the homes that were allegedly damaged beyond repair, as he claimed, without any proof, of the people who lived in those areas, not giving them any opportunity to reclaim their valuable possessions that could have still been in the place, even though, yes, they may have been wet. Things like gold, silver, some family windows are definitely reclaimable and salvageable. And they certainly have a right to their private property that was obliterated by the so-called protection that they claim they were giving. And I fear that this is exactly the same sort of ruse to confuse that's coming down on the poor victims of this, I think, a weather modification tragedy. But,
come on, we're not going to go there. Come on, we're not going to go there. But let me back up. Let me go back to your earlier point here. Okay. People who have lost everything, they're obviously very emotional. They're not thinking clearly. They may go back to the ruin of their house and just be so desperate to reclaim some fragment of their prior life that they could take chances getting into the building, have it collapse on them, and they could die. And so there would be a certain rationale in trying to sort of bring a finality to the destruction where they just have to accept it's all gone, and there's no point in my going back there and risking my life to dig through the rubble. So that's what I would be thinking. Anyway, Chris, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go.
Well, only the weather in 2025 is a reality.
Well, okay, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much. Like I said, everybody uses these disasters to push their own political agenda. Now, do you remember not too long ago, just earlier in the week, in fact, Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Syrian forces reached an agreement with ISIS that had been sort of straddling that border for them to leave. And they traded prisoners, and ISIS was basically heading on out of there. And Syria and Lebanon are now fully in control of their shared border. Well, along comes the United States of America, and they just decide they're going to go ahead and bomb that convoy of ISIS, who were basically leaving the area as a result of this peace accord or disarmament accord that they'd signed with Hezbollah and Syria. And the U.S. is saying, we don't have to honor that. You're transferring terror to someplace else, and therefore we have a right to bomb that. And this, of course, is a ploy by the United States of America so that ISIS won't make any more deals with either Hezbollah or Syria, because they're going to say any deals that we made, the U.S. is going to come on in and just bomb the heck out of us anyway. And so it's just another way for the United States to throw a monkey wrench into any chance of peace there in Syria, because it's really winding down to an end, and the U.S. can't figure out a way how to prevent that from happening. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Mark in Indiana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Am I on?
You're on the air.
I've been listening to your show for about 2 years now. You have an excellent program. But with all the talk about the Hurricane Harvey, I wanted to go ahead and say a few preparedness tips that I may have. And I'm sorry I listened to you a day after on YouTube, so I'm not sure what your specific topic was going on.
Okay.
Okay. So something that people may consider whenever going back down is they have generators already. If they have a car, all you have to do is hook up a power inverter, and you've already got a generator ready to go.
Okay, but you have to be careful you don't draw down the car battery, or you're not going to be able to restart the car. That's one of the downsides of an inverter is if you put too much of a load on it, you can run that car battery down before you even know it. What would almost be an ideal situation to have is a second battery on a switch back and forth. So a lot of the big trucks actually do that, so that if you run the one battery down, you can flip over and still restart your vehicle.
Right, but I'm still saying that there's that possibility of using your car as a generator itself, because even at running idle, you're using very little gasoline to continue to produce electricity for powering whatever they need for the rebuilding process if power's not available.
Okay, yeah, but again, you need to check the amperage on the inverter versus a dedicated generator, because the inverters are good for like a couple of hundred watts, whereas the standalone generators are capable of delivering a lot more.
Right.
I agree.
Somebody an idea.
I use an inverter myself. When I was working on Lost, I had an inverter in my car because there were some places that we were going to go. I didn't have AC available to me.
Right, and one of the websites that I've looked at that has the best preparedness info has been Stephen Harris, and it's Stephen Harris 1234. If you do a search, you can find him. You've got a lot of hokey, overpriced stuff. This guy actually has good, accessible information that won't cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, there are some very good sites out there. Yes, and there's a lot of sites out there trying to sell you products. And unfortunately, one of the things I've learned early on when I started becoming a prepper is that there are companies that are out there selling what they call emergency versions of various things like flashlights and radios and whatnot. And what you discover is they're actually cheaper and more fragile than just regular daily use versions of the same thing, because the thinking is, well, these people are probably never actually going to use this anyway, so we can use a cheaper plastic. I remember I got one of these little gizmos. It was a combination radio, flashlight, cell phone charger, and it was actually sanctioned by the Red Cross. And the first time I took it out, to make sure it was still working, the plastic case had started to literally turn back into goo. It was just this sticky mess. It was cheap plastic.
Yep, and that's another thing that website actually does, is he goes through and tests various products and says which is the best one available for the money. So that was why I brought his name up specifically.
Okay, give us that website one more time. One more time.
If you just do a Google search, Stephen Harris 1234, he's got multiple websites, but that will get you to the information.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Mike. We're going to let you go and take a break for commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're talking about the war zones. It's been an interesting development. On top of everything else those poor people in Syria have been dealing with, they've had an outbreak of polio over there. We've been hearing about outbreaks of polio in a bunch of places, but here is the new development. The United Nations is now admitting the latest outbreak of polio in Syria was caused by the polio vaccines. And basically this is coming from UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, and World Health Organization representative Elizabeth Hoff is reporting that 33 children under the age of 5 have become paralyzed, and the detection of the circulating vaccine-derived polio virus type 2 cases demonstrate that disease surveillance systems are functional in Syria. Our priority now is to achieve the highest possible polio immunization coverage to stop the circulation of the virus. So what we have here is the UN admits the polio epidemic is caused by the polio vaccine. And what's their response? Hand out more vaccines. Some people can be so blind, especially when there's a paycheck attached to it. Now, as you know, earlier this week, Benjamin Netanyahu's been running around screaming, oh, they're coming to get us, Iran is coming to get us, they're building more death camps, they're building missile factories in Lebanon and Syria, and they're doing all this other stuff, and they're getting ready to attack us and invade us, help us, help us, help us. And the response from Russia has been rather sanguine. Sergei Lavrov basically is coming across as not particularly impressed and saying that the Russian government has absolutely zero information about anyone planning an attack on Israel, least of all Iran, and then reminded Netanyahu regarding his comment about bombing Assad's palace that to do so would be a violation of international law. Of course, my comment to Sergei Lavrov is, whenever did international law stop Israel from doing something like that? And the answer is never. But Benjamin Netanyahu is basically, he's throwing a tantrum that Russia didn't come on board and say, oh yes, we've got to just do bad things to Iran. And apparently Prime Minister Netanyahu, during his meeting with Putin, basically got the message that Russia is a player in the Middle East, but it treats all nations on an equal footing. And they're balancing between Tel Aviv and Tehran. And that's not what Netanyahu wanted. Netanyahu wanted Russia totally on Israel's side, and he's not going to get it. Now, here's a wonderful little story. Apparently, two Israeli companies, Elbit Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries, are cooperating on a program on an upgrade package for elderly Lockheed Martin F-16As. And so basically Israel has decided they're going to sell off all of these F-16s that we gave them, because we're about to give them a bunch of F-35s. And so they're modernizing the aircraft, and then they're going to sell them to other countries. So let me see if I can recap this for you. Israel upgrades F-16 fighter jets that they receive from the USA, and then they're going to resell them. This doesn't sound like a country which really needs our help. This sounds like a country that's scamming the heck out of the American taxpayer. Now, here's an interesting story. There is this gentleman who was just arrested for being a member of ISIS, for being an imam who recruited fighters for ISIS and trained them. And it turns out he's a Mossad agent. He infiltrated Daesh. He's from a group known as Mossad's Arabists. This is a unit in the Mossad where everybody in it lives like an Arab, speaks Arabic, and they're designed to infiltrate and blend on in. And this guy did. At one point, this guy they've arrested commanded 200 fighters from ISIS. So I guess ISIS really did stand for Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the telephones here. Tony in Puerto Rico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike, and a belated happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I have a quick comment. The other day we spoke about the Rothschilds. Are they still around?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, my other question is this. Their money is considered old money, am I correct?
Yeah, it would be considered old money.
Okay, now, do they pay taxes?
That depends on where they are. I mean, the family is spread pretty much across the globe. As far as their interests in the Federal Reserve are concerned, the Federal Reserve actually pays no taxes at all other than the property tax on the land on which the banks sit. But it's if you read the actual charter that created the Federal Reserve, they're exempt from all other taxation.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right. Have a good day. Okay, getting on back to the news here and the war zones and Israel whining and crying. Apparently, Netanyahu is now out there just screaming that there will never be a state of Palestine, that the West Bank is Israel forever, and just all this tough talk about Eretz Israel. And it almost seems like he's grandstanding. And I think the reason he is, of course, as you know, he's in political trouble back home. He's being investigated, potentially charged for some major corruption issues. The Israeli people don't like him anymore. Much of the Israeli government and the Knesset are fed up with him. And so he may not be a problem for much longer here. Meanwhile, Belgium is demanding compensation from Israel after the Israeli government bulldozed 6 EU-funded schools in a village near Bethlehem last week, and the children are now having to study in tents or just outside in the weather. And Belgium basically says Israel has to pay for it. You don't get to just knock down stuff that we build and not pay for it. Okay, we're going to take a phone call. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, good day, Michael. First off, I don't know if they call it the anti-left. I think actually they're anarchists. That's definitely what they are. They're having a show right now about that. They're actually anarchists, all these anti-leftists. But, Michael, I saw something that's kind of perturbing. I don't know if you have a chance to see it. Did you hear about the serial killer in Kansas City killing all the white males? Shoot them in the back of the head?
No.
They were walking their dogs?
No, I didn't hear that one. When is that going on now?
Yes, sir. It's going on right now. He murdered 5 of them. It was on the Drudge report. I think Drudge had it. It was on Drudge where I saw it. This guy's going around. His half-brother got killed by a black male, but he's taking it out on white people, blaming the white people for his brother getting murdered by a black male. And this guy's killed 5 senior citizen males that are walking their dogs in a park, and he shot them all in the back of the head. If that was the other way around, Michael, like the thing that happened in South Carolina, this would be on the news for the next 10 years.
Oh, yeah. If there was... Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we know there's a bias. The corporate media loves to report anytime a white attacks a black person. They won't report when a black attacks a white person or when a black attacks a black person. Because, again, the agenda has been to try and create this racial divide to turn us against each other so we don't unite against our common enemy, which is that federal government.
Right, and this gentleman, this animal, this beast, this monster who killed all these white males, he even said he wanted to kill everybody in this white school. He wanted to shoot up the school like Columbine. And now the Kansas City police came out saying, this guy is a serial killer. And you'll see the story after you'll research it.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now.
George Soros is responsible for this, Michael, and those people's families should sue Soros and the anti-left for creating this in CNN. These news networks are responsible for this animal going out and killing all these innocent males that are retired and trying to live their last days out of their lives, and they probably worked all their lives working, and now they're all dead. This is disgusting. It's disgraceful, and these people in CNN and all these news networks should be held accountable and sued beyond belief, like they're trying to do. Michael, I'm looking at this crap with the Confederacy and how they're trying to take the statues down. We had a big thing. Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz was over here in Hollywood trying to take the street names out, like Hood. You have Hood, Bedford Forest, and Lee Street here in Hollywood, Florida. And she's a Blabbermouth talking. And I'm saying to myself, Blabbermouth, would you do that with Israel? You want to talk about real racists? Come on, let's look at who the real racists are here.
Yes.
And by the way, Michael, they had a study I saw that was really interesting. Do you know that the Zionist faith, they consider themselves more black than they do white? They actually side up with the blacks over white, the Zionists.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, my experience has been that
when it comes to civil issues, yes. When it comes to rights and all, civil rights and all that, of course they sway to the other side. There's no question about it. But yeah, Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz is over here, and I don't know. I guess they had the ruling this afternoon. I haven't got a chance to see what happened with that ruling. But those names have been on those streets for over 60 years, 70 years in Hollywood here, and now they're taking the names out. Now they want to name them after some pop culture celebrity like Katy Perry Street or something. It's unbelievable. It's amazing what's happening here. And, by the way, Mike, one more thing, I'll let you go. I know you got other callers. They knocked the head off Christopher Columbus in New York, and then I heard they were taking down a statue, and it's all over the news now. In California, Southern California, you're taking a statue down of Columbus, and they're going to put Native American Day or something, a Native American statue or something. That's all over the news right now that they're taking the statue of Columbus down. So pretty soon they're going to go out to Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson. I guarantee you, Jefferson Memorial Washington is probably going to be disbarred pretty soon. Take them down. They're going to close it.
Well, I wonder what they're going to do about the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. It's not like they can take that down very easily. Or if they start the fracking back up, it'll come down all by itself.
But who's actually allowing this? The white majority in this country are allowing this. This is a small minority who's actually doing this, and that should be stopped. That should be stopped pronto. Donald Trump says, put it down.
Well, in some of these places...
We are the majority. We're not the minority here. We're the majority of white angles.
Okay, Tom, calm down. Calm down. Okay? You have a tendency to let yourself get carried away here. Now, obviously, in the case where these activists are getting the local governments to cave in on changing these monuments and streets and so forth, there really isn't much we can do because it's their jurisdiction. But what we ought to really start doing is these individuals who are going on out and committing vandalism against monuments and statues, that is a crime, and they ought to be caught and made an example of.
Right. Michael, they're having a ruling on DACA today. I think Trump's going to get rid of it. I believe I heard it on one of the news networks. He's going to get rid of DACA. Thank God. He needs to get rid of that.
Okay. All right, Tom. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Get on back to the news. Now, as you know, Nikki Haley has been up at the United Nations foaming at the mouth about Iran and how Iran is in violation of the spirit of the P5+1 because Iran will not allow open access to all of its military facilities for U.S. inspection. And, of course, Iran's position is that the facilities that were to be open for inspection are delineated in the P5+1 deal, and they are open for inspection. And, in fact, the Aiea was just in there about a month ago and gave them a clean bill of health. And Nikki Haley is out there saying, no, we have to have access to all of the facilities, and Iran has to stop making ballistic missiles. And it's finally reached the point where Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, is saying it is clear Nikki Haley doesn't actually know what's in the P5+1. She hasn't even read it. She's just there to push this, Iran bad, Iran bad, Iran bad. Iran has to give us what we want. And she doesn't really know what she's talking about. And it's another reminder we have to figure out why it is we have such uninformed, uneducated idiots rising to these positions of power and influence, especially when you're talking about the risk of a war. Because certainly the rest of the world is getting a very clear impression that the United States government does not keep its commitments, does not comply with treaty requirement, that the United States government is the nation that has gone rogue. Now, Josh Bolton is out there all over the media saying the only way to stop Iran's nuclear program is to just go ahead and bomb the place. And he's out there saying that, we've had 25 years of negotiations with Iran, and it's gotten us absolutely nowhere, and it's basically time to bomb all of Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, remember when Israel bombed Iraq's nuclear facilities on the excuse that they were building bombs in there? And then following the invasion, international experts went on up there and discovered that the only thing that was inside that Osiric nuclear reactor was a power station. It did not have a clandestine bomb factory the way that Israel has underneath Dimona. And the same thing is going on with Iran. Everybody's out there just trying to say, oh, Iran's got a secret bomb factory underneath their power station. We've just got to bomb them. For 30 years, we have been hearing that Iran is just weeks away from a nuclear bomb. It has not happened. We know who the aggressor is here. We know who the liars are here. And if you don't believe the lies, you're called a tool of Russia or an anti-Semite or some other name like that, or a hostile foreign intelligence service like they're trying to do to WikiLeaks. They're trying to get around the First Amendment by saying that anybody who doesn't agree with the U.S. government is obviously an enemy of the state. Now, Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, had a phone call with U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson saying that more sanctions on North Korea could be very dangerous. It could kick off a restart of the war between North and South, and regardless of what happens to North Korea, South Korea is not going to fare very well. Meanwhile, Theresa May is in Japan saying that she refuses to rule out military and cyber attacks on North Korea. So she's getting on in. Oh, it's going to be fun. We're all going to dogpile on North Korea. It'll be a lot of fun. Upping the ante, the United States dropped bombs on the border of North Korea in a joint exercise with South Korean forces using jets that are capable of carrying nuclear weapons. The world is watching, and probably a lot of countries are already choosing which side they're going to be on. But when you start dropping live bombs on somebody's border, it sends a message. We're coming for you. There is nothing you can say. There is nothing you can do. We're coming to get you. Because we're the United States of America, and that's what we do. By the way, you remember Donald Rumsfeld? The guy who was up there at the Pentagon saying, hey, we just lost $3 trillion of your money. We haven't a clue where it went here. Oh, let's see. Now, back in 2002, Donald Rumsfeld declared North Korea a terrorist state, part of the axis of evil, and a target for regime change. Only 2 years earlier, Donald Rumsfeld had been director of a company which won a $200 million contract to sell nuclear reactors to North Korea. Gee, Don, can't you make up your money, or your mind, or is it just a matter of who's paying you the most money at the moment? Set your policy here. Now, the U.S., of course, is carrying out their own nuclear test. They're not explosive tests. What they're doing is they're testing a newly designed bomb. It is the B-6112 gravity bombs, and they're drop testing them from F-15E fighter jets at Tonopah Test Range in Nevada. And basically, these are non-exploding versions of the bomb, and they're basically gathering data for the targeting system, because these are supposed to be the most accurate bomb ever created by the United States. It has an adjustable yield running from 300 tons of TNT up to 50 kilotons of TNT, which is about 5 times the force of Hiroshima. And it's the newest, latest, greatest weapon in the nuclear arsenal. It's got chrome, and it's got stereo, it's got Sirius XM radio, and all the other bells and whistles here. Down in the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte is basically saying that in order to get ISIS out of his country before the U.S. sees it as an excuse to invade, that he is going to authorize the bombing of mosques. Now, they have liberated the Grand Mosque of Marawi, and that one is going to be protected. But Philippine military can now bomb mosques, madrasas, and other hiding centers to get rid of ISIS, which all of a sudden showed up right after Duterte decided he wanted to get the drug dealers out of his country. Strange how that works. The U.S. is now retaliating against Russia in this escalating tit-for-tat diplomatic warfare. The U.S. has ordered the closure of the San Francisco Russian consulate, a chancery annex in Washington, and a consular annex in New York City. Usually closing somebody's diplomatic facilities is seen as one of the steps leading to outright war. So let's talk a little bit about the economic news here. Remember Wells Fargo? They've got this fake accounts scandal, and it's growing and growing and growing. Basically, in September of last year, they acknowledged employees under pressure to meet aggressive sales targets had opened accounts that customers weren't even aware of in order to charge them fees and churn stuff around. And they admitted to just over 1 million of these accounts. Today, Wells Fargo shuffled its feet and looked at the ground and said that, yeah, actually it was 3.5 million of these accounts that were opened by Wells Fargo employees without the customer's permission between 2009 and 2016. They're all crooks over there. They are all crooks over there. Now, the European Union is facing 51 lawsuits totaling billions of pounds for shutting down Spain's 6th largest bank. Now, the EU was under the impression that it was in trouble, insolvent, and unsalvageable. Others have different opinions, so the lawsuits are flying over there. If you live in Maryland, your average Obamacare premium doubled over the last 4 years, and a 50% rate hike for next year has just been approved. Here's an interesting little story, little statistic. I want you to think about this one. This came out of CNS News. Oh, going to take a break, then we'll come back with this news. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, this week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released some information I think you're going to find interesting. Apparently, they found Americans on average are spending more on taxes than they do on food and clothing combined. That's a lot of money. Now, what are you getting for that money that you give to the federal government? You're certainly not getting a new pair of jeans out of that, are you? Or Nikes. Not getting steak and potatoes or anything. What do you get for all that money? You get a crumbling infrastructure. You get your lives meddled in. You get surveilled for it. It's time for Americans to ask, are you getting value for all that money? And the answer is overwhelmingly no. That's pretty alarming out there. Now then, let's talk about immigration here. Apparently, in Germany, 390,000 Syrians will be eligible to bring their entire families into Germany next year. And that, of course, is going to complicate things. There's a family reunification rule where all these Syrians who've managed to get to Germany can now turn around and have their families join them. And they love big families. They really do. Now, down in Texas, a federal judge has blocked parts of Texas' strict new immigration crackdown law, ruling that the state cannot attempt to punish sanctuary cities for refusing to turn illegal immigrants over to federal authorities for deportation. But the judge left in place the part of the law that allows police to determine the legal status of those they encounter during their duties. Judge Garcia said as long as the checks don't prolong the encounter, they are presumed to be constitutional. And again, a reminder for those of you in the flood zones, those 50 counties that were hit by Hurricane Harvey, the immigration authorities are saying there are no immigration enforcement actions taking place. So if you are an illegal immigrant, you can go and avail yourself of emergency services. Nothing will happen to you. They're suspending all the operations until things start to get back to normal, which is going to be a while. And I'm in agreement with that. This is a time for everybody to be humane. Story coming on out here, Democrats will have to block the Pentagon's 2018 budget in September if they want to stop President Trump's plan to extend the nation's border walls. This according to immigration reformers. They're going to make a big, big stink over the border wall. They're trying, at one point they were trying to tie it in to aid for the Hurricane Harvey victims. You know, if you want the aid, you'll have to give up the border. I mean, again, everybody's playing politics with all these people suffering. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to take a phone call. Terry in Oregon, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today? Terry, are you there?
Can you hear me, Mike?
Now I can hear you.
Me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. You mentioned that Rumsfeld said they can't account for $2.3 million, or, you know, this is paraphrasing what you just said.
Trillion with a T.
Yeah, right. That was the day before 9/11.
Yes.
And at that time, Dov Zakheim was a comptroller of the Pentagon.
Yes.
And he was the guy that caught marking F-15s and F-16 aircraft down just above junk and selling them to Israel.
That was
when you said they were going to sell. I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's one of the things that the U.S. will do to help Israel is they'll do a production run of brand new whatever, aircraft, trucks, whatever, and then all of a sudden there'll be a bunch of them. They'll say, well, these are actually surplus. We can't use them, so we're going to mark them down and sell them as surplus, and then Israel gets to buy them for pennies on the dollar. Brand new equipment for just a fraction of their actual price, and they're using the money that we gave them to begin with. I mean, it's just one scam after the other after the other. Another thing that Congress will do is they'll loan money to Israel, and then in the dead of night somewhere down the road, they'll forgive the loan. They'll write it off, so that Israel can say we've never defaulted on a loan to the United States, even though most of them don't actually get repaid. And I think there's actually a law that says that the amount of money given by the U.S. government to Israel every year has to include whatever Israel is paying out on its other debts back to the United States. And I think that was... I'm blanking on the name of the politician whose name is on that, but it's just the whole system is rigged so that money comes out of your pocket and flows to Israel.
Yeah, well, Jim Trafficant said they're getting about $15 billion, not $3 billion. You know, when you figure all the sources of income they have from the United States.
Oh yeah.
And I was just wondering, do you think there's any connection between the refusal of the Federal Reserve to be audited and all this missing money going to Israel?
There might be, but I think it's just more a case of the owners of the Federal Reserve are absolutely terrified what's going to happen when the people of the United States of America learn just how much money the Federal Reserve has taken from our pockets over the years in exchange for permission to use their ink and paper.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, thanks. Good talking to you. Take care. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, there is an author, Rahim Kassem, who wrote a book on Europe's no-go zones. The book just now came on out. And apparently he is now touring the United States of America to write a new book. And he says, yeah, we're starting to see these no-go zones start to appear here in the United States, inner city Detroit, Chicago, Miami, and he's basically saying, yeah, it's starting to happen here. Nobody wants to talk about it, but you look at what's going on in Europe at the no-go zones. These are literally areas which are now dominated by the migrants, and they have become so scary that nobody dares go in there, not even the police or the fire departments. And it's starting to happen here. Now, another story that's out of Blacklisted News. Apparently, there is a study out there done by the University of California, Santa Barbara, basically showing that there is a link between pesticides and birth abnormalities. We're literally poisoning ourselves with these chemicals that are recklessly put on out there. And apparently they did a statistical study of birth records in terms of the areas where they had the exposure to these various pesticides. Now, they're not saying which pesticide is involved, but they're all very toxic chemicals. And there is a long history of these chemicals just being put into the marketplace without fully understanding what they're going to do. Now then, there's another article that came on out, and this one has to do with the condition called gout. Now, I'm a little sensitive to this because some years ago, I was having a real problem with gout. And I got it under control by drinking alkaline water and tart cherry and various other things like that. And then all of a sudden, it started to become a problem again. And somebody sent me this article, which first of all talks about the fact that right now there is an epidemic in gout in the United States. It's really starting to surge, and it's very, very painful for those of you who get it. And the whole point of this paper is now saying that the conventional wisdom that high-fat diet and alcohol leads to gout is only part of the explanation, that there is a link with glyphosate. If you are exposed to glyphosate, it disrupts the good, healthy microbes in your intestine, and it creates what is called a sulfate deficiency, which leads to gout attacks. So we literally live in a world where companies are using products that make you feel sick, and you come on out and say, your product is making me feel sick. What do? Take the dangerous product off the market? No. Oh, no, you go over to the doctor. They'll sell you a pill, make you feel better. You won't be better, but you'll feel better, and that's really all that matters as long as we get your money. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Be very careful opening emails right now. There's a massive, massive email campaign with the newer version of the Locky ransomware. So far, over 23 million people have received these. Now, the emails have these very vague subject lines like please print, documents, images, photos, pictures, scans, trying to convince you to open this up. Now, the email comes with a zip attachment, which contains a Visual Basic script file inside a secondary zip file so that your security scanners can't see it. Some of the higher-end security scanners will open a zip file and examine it, but if they see another zip file in there, that's where they stop. Now, if you get tricked into clicking on this Visual Basic script, it starts a downloader that downloads the latest version of the Locky ransomware called Eukitis, which means locked in Finnish, and it will encrypt all the files on your target computer and appends Locutus to the encrypted data. So, even more alarming, there are 465,000 patients who need a software update for their hackable pacemakers. This according to the FDA. And it's a reminder, the more we put everything online, the more that we have everything that we own connects to the internet, the more vulnerable we are. Because apparently, especially in the world of Internet of Things, they're not really thinking of these as security problems. Because it's a computerized coffee machine, and it's a computerized light bulb, and it's a computerized thermostat. You know, these are harmless. No, they're not. Anything that's got data going in and data going out can be compromised and used for all kinds of nefarious purposes. And when you're talking about computerized medical equipment, you are talking about the possibility of people being killed, either inadvertently or deliberately. Somebody wants to cash in on the life insurance, they can get into the pacemaker, turn off the heart. So we have almost 500,000 people, 500,000 people who are currently living, surviving on buggy pacemakers. It's amazing here. Well, we're starting to see, shall we say, the shakeout, the fallout, the merge out of the various home digital assistants where you yak at it and it will talk to you. And apparently, Alexa is marrying Cortana, and they're going to be basically, Amazon and Microsoft are going to link their respective voice-based helpers, Alexa and Cortana, so they can talk to one another, or more importantly, they can use the features and capabilities of each other. A big one will be that when this tie-up works, it will allow Alexa users to book meetings and read email messages using Cortana's Office 365 integration. And it will also work in the opposite direction, enabling Cortana users to bark orders into an Android phone, iPhone, or Windows 10 PC to direct Alexa to control smart home devices like Amazon Echo, or to buy 2 tons of creamed corn on Amazon.com. Now, I don't use those devices myself. We've already heard all these stories about people just say something just off the cuff and inadvertently order a product they did not want. Now, do you remember earlier in this year there was an embarrassment leading up to the grand solar eclipse where Amazon carried these solar glasses that turned out to be inferior. They weren't fully protective. And Amazon sent out a notice to everybody who'd bought them, said, you're going to get a refund, just throw them away, don't even send them back. And apparently somebody either just ignored the warning from Amazon, and they went ahead and used these faulty solar eclipse glasses, and they're now claiming their eyesight was damaged, and they're filing a class action lawsuit in South Carolina's federal court against Amazon for everybody whose eyes were damaged by these glasses. Well, I think Amazon made a good faith effort to notify people that these glasses had a problem. I think if anybody was going to be sued, it was the company that made the glasses in the first place and represented them as being adequate protection to look at an eclipse. I understand that you should be able to sue companies that put out bad products and know they put out a bad product, whether it's a bad vaccine, bad software, and so forth. But in this case, Amazon is a victim along with everybody else. And they did make a good faith effort to deal with the crisis. They gave everybody back their money, and they notified everybody, do not use these glasses. And I think civil litigation has to stop at the point where you're just being an idiot. You know, like people who accidentally dump the coffee at a fast food restaurant in their lap and it's hot and it burns them. And they want to sue the restaurant because it was hot coffee. It says right on the thing, hot coffee. This thing is hot. It does get out of control. There are, unfortunately, a lot of people who think a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, is their path to wealth and independence and riches. And I'll tell you right now, no, it isn't. It's the path for your lawyer to have riches and wealth and independence. You're going to get hardly anything out of it at all. It just generally isn't worth it. I think in this case, this is a nonsense lawsuit. Now, we've been talking about this before. Apparently, the Senate Intelligence Committee, including Harris and Rubio, are voting to criminalize a media outlet. In this case, they're going after WikiLeaks, declaring it a non-state hostile intelligence service. And they're doing this to try and get around the First Amendment. And they're declaring WikiLeaks an enemy. It's a multinational media organization, and it's obviously an enemy of the United States, with enemy of the United States being defined as anybody who points out where the U.S. government has been lying to the American people or the rest of the world to justify wars or anything else. Now, I want to remind everybody, if you go on back to that Constitution of the United States of America, you can get copies of them all over the place here. There is nothing in here that allows the U.S. government, authorizes the U.S. government to lie to us about anything. It's just not in there. And the 10th Amendment makes it clear the government is not allowed to simply decide for itself. It has that right to lie to us. So each and every time the government lies to us, it becomes an illegal, illegitimate, unconstitutional government. It's an occupying power at best. And we have a right to point on out when the government is not abiding by the contract that it has with we the people, which is that Constitution. And the more that government tries to erode our basic civil rights, the more obvious it becomes it is an illegitimate government. And at some point we have to say, we're not going to listen to an illegitimate government. We're going to stop listening. We're going to stop filling out the paperwork. We're going to stop obeying what you say. We're just going to sit down, mind our own business, and let you collapse, which is where I think it is definitely headed. But the problem is this appears to be the beginning of an attempt by the United States government to find a way around that First Amendment in order to silence the independent media, because they are very unhappy that they have lost the ability to lie to the American people with impunity. Because they've gotten away with it for so long, they don't know any other way to run the country. They don't know how to be a real government. All they know how to do is lie and take things. And sort of underscoring all of that, WikiLeaks has come on out with another revelation that after months of the German press screaming that Russia interfered with the last German election, Germany's intelligence services are saying, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. The German security authorities is saying there's no evidence of it whatsoever. Everything is being blamed on Russia. And of course, the big stink right now is they're still trying to keep this story going about how Russia hacked the DNC servers and Russia hacked the election itself. Now, as you know, Dana Rohrabacher is trying to get a meeting with Donald Trump because Dana met with Julian Assange. And Assange said Seth Rich was the leaker for the DNC. It wasn't the Russians. Assange has the proof. And Rohrabacher is trying to get that to Donald Trump. But if that other report about from Cernovich is out there saying that basically Trump is a prisoner inside his own White House, and the White House chief of staff is not letting certain things through to Trump, it's going to be a problem. Because Trump needs to know that there is evidence that it wasn't the Russians hacking the DNC server. And you, the American people, have every right to that information as well. Now, there's another fake news story circulating that WikiLeaks servers have been hacked. No, that is false also. And I think that story was being put on out there to try and make it look like anything that's coming out of WikiLeaks in the immediate future is going to be bogus and untrustworthy. And between that and the intensity of the attacks on my server, it almost does feel like we are coming up on some kind of a major event. Certainly here on Hawaii, where we have all these military bases, just constant warplanes flying overhead, everybody's drilling up, everybody's training. It does really feel like the U.S. government is just desperate to get a war going, a major war going, ahead of the economic crash, so they got something to blame it on. All right. By the way, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and I'm running out of talking points here, so now would be a good time for you to call on in and share whatever it is you're thinking about all the stuff that's going on. Meanwhile, on this upcoming commercial break, I'm going to check in and see what's going on back down in Texas with Hurricane Harvey and the aftermath. And it does look like we're in the recovery phase, which means all the politicians are showing up to act like they've got something relevant to contribute to what's going on down there. But now it's the damage assessment. I'm still curious to know what the damage was to those offshore oil drilling platforms. How many of them are still there? How many of them were lost? How many have suffered a rupture of their they're drilling pipes. There could be a real mess down there. So we're going to take a minute here to do some commercials. And again, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the telephones. Ernest in Nevada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to go back to you making a point about how that if we do fall, if we do fall apart, that we're going to have to be able to rebuild ourselves the same way the Soviet Union rebuilt themselves to become Russia. And so I just think that we're in the crosshairs. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be allowed. That the whole idea of a world government is that it can't have countries like us, and that we're being set up to have the rest of the world hate us. I mean, for the past decade and a half, the rest of the world has seen us going around killing millions of civilians.
Well,
people don't realize.
They've seen that since the end of World War II. I mean, the U.S. history of interventions in other countries is not a new thing. And that's the reason why, the United States isn't hated because somebody set us up to be hated. The United States is hated because of the actions of the United States government.
Right, and the United States government is being run by a military junta that actually has been in charge since the Kennedy assassination.
I'm not sure I would see that. I mean, yes, they certainly seem to be in charge right now. But I think what was in charge of the country since the John F. Kennedy assassination was the Central Intelligence Agency.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. That's part of the cog. But you know that every president that has come since after Kennedy has been either removed, like Nixon, or he was shot too. Reagan was shot, and Reagan was a non-factor. Papa Bush, who is one of the main cogs in this, he was in charge. Reagan just didn't want to get shot again.
Well, Reagan was also dealing with his Alzheimer's.
Well, yeah, I mean that's one way of saying, don't listen to me. I'm feeble-minded. See, that's honestly, this group has been in charge of this country, and it hasn't been the same since Kennedy was shot, and I think we all know that.
Yes.
Or anybody that was old enough to remember how it was. But anyway, Mike, what I wanted to say was that because if you tie in the Deagle report and you see when you eliminate over two-thirds of a population in that time frame, that has to imply that there's going to be something that may be beyond nuclear war, or nuclear war might be part of it, because we're going to see Germany and England also lose about half of their populations. So honestly, I'm thinking that this country is being set up that it will be in a kind of like a retainership, that there will be a UN that's going to control all these corridors that states that in the Agenda 21 from 1990s. That's been around, that document.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the document. They've already renamed it Agenda 30 because they're off the timeline here. But you need to understand that there is no monolithic body that's in control of planet Earth right now. There are different factions that are trying to be in control, and it's going back and forth. Within our own government, it is badly factionalized. You have the Pentagon that's trying to run things, certainly from inside the White House. You've got the CIA, which thinks that they're best suited to plot the future course of the country. Same thing with all of the intelligence agencies to one degree or the other. We have our three branches of the main federal government that are supposed to balance and check each other. They're now at war with each other to try and take the reins of control and leadership, with Congress trying to literally override the president in terms of declaring war against countries. You have the Supreme Court that is trying to rewrite the law, even the Constitution from the bench. And so this is a very chaotic time, and we're seeing the U.S. government badly factionalized, which is why I think it's going to fall apart very quickly.
Right. Mike, but the idea that all these different groups and entities, they're following from the outside. You're talking about...
No, they're working out of their own self-interest. They're working out of their own
Mike,
self-interest. Okay, we got to let you go. Ernest, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, coming up on the top of the hour, and we're going to go back to the phone. Sherry in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. This is just bits and pieces. We ran out of, I went to the grocery store yesterday, and there was no water, but I was okay. And but there was absolutely not 1 gallon of bottled water. And a lot of people came up from San Antonio here to more south central Texas. And there was a wonderful feeling of camaraderie in the air. We were even talking about how everything was just standing in line with perfect strangers. You know, this is like, it was like this from past disasters. You can just feel people drawing closer together.
Yes.
Lots of people in town. Yeah, that's a good part of it. Also, yeah, bread and eggs were all sold out, but they've restocked those. So, and I'm a prepper myself, and I think the last time I was talking about what could happen and natural disasters and stuff, I called them preppies. So I want to apologize. I know better. I don't know how I did that, but preppers, yes, preppers.
Absolutely.
Now, yeah, I got that wrong, as I often do with words and names. Okay. People's names. Oh, yeah, what was that? The guy who did the GMO, Jeffrey M. Smith. That's another one I needed to correct. But anyway, how does a bank open a false account from an existing account? I mean, what can a person look for? How can this happen? If you have to put money in the account to open it, so how can they open one without?
No, they didn't. Basically, these were they weren't regular bank accounts; they were investment accounts, and apparently these brokers were under tremendous pressure to generate new business and new accounts, and because they couldn't actually get people to open the accounts, they were opening them in the names of existing Wells Fargo customers, and apparently there were like 3.5 million of them, and apparently it was done just to try and meet the sales targets that were overly ambitious, and now Wells Fargo's in serious trouble legally for committing fraud, sanctioning the fraud, and even worse, those 3.5 million accounts are obviously not generating any revenue for Wells Fargo, and that's going to force them to have to reevaluate their earnings reports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I see. Well, I was kind of doing things when you were talking. I hate when I have to miss something, but I find NBC I have to kind of listen to corporate media once in a while just to see where they're going. NBC seems a little better than ABC and PBS, and I don't listen to CBS too much. I just come through on an antenna, but I get everything I need. And when I hear something that's just really rankles my brain, I just cut it off at that point because I don't want to ruin my day. And it seems like over time, they're going to, I don't know where their standing is in the ratings from what they used to be before all these lies and deceit kind of came to light. But the networks, they've got to be suffering on down the line, and their advertisers too. There's like a certain pickup that they always advertise, or there's certain drug companies they usually advertise.
Mm-hmm.
I can't fathom doing them business. I can't figure that I don't want to be involved with them at all. So they're going to hurt eventually, won't they, from us pulling away? I mean, how can they struggle so much to deceive us and try to turn us around when they're really just hurting themselves?
Well, there's no question they're operating in the red. They're losing huge amounts of money, and they've never been big profit centers for the networks. It's considered an obligation of being a TV network that you provide news. And same thing with the local stations. It's part of your licensing agreement that so much of the day you will be providing news and information of use to your audience. But the fact is they are losing a lot of money, but as long as they are promoting the establishment line, then there will be some mechanism by which those losses are being covered or at least ignored and written off. But on the day when it finally sinks in that the corporate media has lost the ability to control the minds of America, then, yeah, you're going to start seeing them fall apart from the huge financial losses they're suffering.
And I think we're moving forward on that front. And if we had no war at all, I just wanted to say everyone could go home. You know?
Yes, I agree.
That's always a thought. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, getting on back to politics here, this is getting very interesting. Story coming out of Zero Hedge. Apparently, a new letter from Senators Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham revealed testimony from new witnesses suggesting that former FBI Director James Comey had already started drafting the letter exonerating Hillary Clinton long before even interviewing any of the witnesses, including Hillary herself, on that email scandal. So Comey had his marching orders. He was going to let her go no matter what the actual testimony showed. And we remember that press conference. He went down that laundry list of felony Title 18 violations and then said, we're recommending not prosecuting because she didn't mean wrong, even though intent is not required under Title 18. So according to this new evidence, Comey was going to let her go no matter what. Now, according to this letter, which was based on testimony from James Rybicki, Comey's chief of staff, and Tricia Anderson, the principal deputy general counsel of National Security and Cyber Law, Comey began drafting a statement to announce the conclusion of the Hillary investigation in April or May of 2016, well before he had interviewed the 17 key witnesses. As if that were not bad enough, the Comey statement was also drafted before immunity deals were struck with Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson, who seemingly ran point, along with Platte River Networks, to destroy Hillary's emails after a congressional subpoena had been issued mandating their preservation. So you think about that. Now, as you know, the FBI is refusing to release the last batch of Hillary Clinton emails, saying the public isn't interested. Of course we're interested. Jason Chavez says it's obvious the FBI is protecting the deep state. It's obvious to me they're protecting this deep, dark, black, rotted secret at the heart of the government, and it involves espionage. Now, Martin Shkreli is out there claiming he's got all the Clinton emails. And he's saying he's got them in a dead man switch. If anything happens to him, they will be released immediately. I think somebody ought to just go ahead and release them. They have to be out there. We know that there were backup tapes being made at Platte River Networks. We know that the NSA certainly, supposedly, in theory, has all of these emails. They have to be out there somewhere. They need to be released. Okay, now I love this next story here. Apparently, the American Legion at its national convention in Reno, Nevada, just earlier today, voted to approve Resolution 40, calling for the full U.S. government investigation of Israel's 1967 attack on the USS Liberty. So now the American Legion is on board with this. Not that we trust the U.S. government to do an honest job investigating this, because after all, they were part of the cover-up. The cover-up came down from President Lyndon Johnson. But it should remind everybody that no, we do not accept the official story that the weather was bad, that the Israeli pilots couldn't see their target before pulling the trigger. It never really made much sense. All right, let's take some phone calls. Ron in Missouri, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I
Hi.
just want to make a comment. After 9/11, I recall how everyone was treating each other with respect and kindness. I think it's a travesty that we can't do that all the time without having something like that happen to this country.
I agree.
Why can't we just all get together and get along all the time?
Well, that's the way it used to be in this state, the spirit of aloha and everything. Unfortunately, as our economy is deteriorated, and people are tense, and now there's all this talk about possible war and possible attacks on the island. But I remember after that one big tsunami, that came on through following Fukushima. And, because with the tsunami, you have several hours that you know it's coming, and everybody kind of got together, and they were helping each other with sandbags and the rest of it. So I think at heart, humans have an instinct for altruism and community and helping each other out. This is eroded intentionally by mass marketers, advertising, and government to make us dependent on them rather than dependent on each other.
I just hope we can all get together and get along from now on.
I'd sure like to see that. I would sure like to see that. I think that was kind of the message of Lenin's Imagine. Anyway, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Dan in British Columbia. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Yeah, I just want a couple of things. I know I usually want one subject per call, but I had this YouTube channel taken down, and I phoned you about 3 weeks ago because I knew it was going to come down, and I sort of asked some of your listeners if they could go out and grab as many of those videos and copy them. And finally, yesterday, it did go down. So 600 videos of Sandy Hook and Boston bombing and some stuff about Israel and, well, you name it. So it's just, they're really going after, independent thinkers, I think, and the whole, the ADL, I think, is on board with censoring YouTube. And my point was, what do you know about the Anti-Defamation League sort of being agent provocateurs? Because I just have this sneaking suspicion that this whole thing in Charlottesville has the Southern Poverty Law Center all over it and the ADL, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Well, the ADL has been caught acting as agent provocateurs. There have been quite a few scandals where the ADL is running spy operations on American citizens and American media on behalf of Israel. So they're definitely out there doing a lot of unethical things. And one of the things the ADL will often do is they'll actually create false flag Nazi incidents, hate crime hoaxes, in order to fundraise. There was a real interesting stink because back when ADL was first formed, there was actually an American Nazi party. This was just before World War II. And this American Nazi party had a total membership of like 6, but they got a lot of media attention. And the ADL was going on out there seeing there are Nazis coming to America. You've got to donate to us. We've got to fight the rise of the Nazis in America. And then the head of the American Nazi party got arrested for embezzlement. And it turned out he was stealing money from his employer, who was the Anti-Defamation League. So, yeah, even back then they were carrying out these little hoaxes to defraud people.
Yeah, and I just read on your website, I think it was the other 2 days ago, something about Franklin D. Roosevelt's sedition trials from 1944, where the ADL and the FBI were working hand in hand to go after anti-communists, anti-Semites, and isolationists, people that didn't want any part of the war in Europe.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that's a pretty powerful organization for just being a charitable organization. I mean, apparently the prosecutors couldn't tell the difference between the FBI investigators and the ADL investigators. And usually the FBI would just take the ADL's word for it. And they went after about 30 people. One of them was the woman who gave Henry Ford all his information about, the International Jew and the whole thing about that he wrote about in Dearborn Independent. So, this whole thing with all the hate groups and stuff, it just seems so fishy. And talk about cui bono, because they're getting donations hand over fist right now.
Yes.
The ADL and the SB Southern Poverty Law Center. So anyways, I'll leave you with that. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, you got it. Thank you very much for the phone call. Well, as the name implies, Anti-Defamation League, it's a propaganda outfit. It was created in the wake of this very ugly incident where this Jewish factory owner had been accused of assaulting and murdering one of his young female employees, and it went to trial. He was convicted and sentenced, then pardoned by the state's Jewish governor, at which point the townspeople got very angry and they went and lynched him, which was not a good thing to do. And the Anti-Defamation League was formed expressly to shield Jewish Americans from negative publicity. That's what the name Anti-Defamation League means. And it's irrelevant whether the Jewish Americans had done anything to deserve criticism. The whole point of the ADL is that nobody who's Jewish American will ever be criticized openly in any kind of media. That's their job, to protect them, to shield them from the consequences of their behavior. And that's where the ADL came from. And you can research this. You can do a Google all over where this came from. And you've got the ADL. They're almost as powerful as AIPAC. And behind them you have the JDL, which is actually declared a terrorist organization, but nobody seems to want to actually arrest them. And a lot of these other pro-Israel organizations. It's a huge, huge network of Zionism. Anyway, moving along here, scientists have discovered this is a major problem. Apparently, the fish in the Great Lakes region, scientists are finding there's a high concentration of antidepressants in the fish's brain. Apparently, a lot of people around the Great Lakes are doing antidepressants. They excrete the excess into the sewage system. It gets into the water, and I guess the fish are picking it up. I guess they're very mellow, happy fish. But the problem is, it means that you're just people who are not prescribed these antidepressants are being exposed to this medication. And we know that this medication can have an adverse effect on a segment of the population, leading to suicide, violence, domestic violence, road rage, mass shootings, who knows what all else. Latest word from the Arctic, the sea ice extent is up 25% since 2012. So much for the theory of human-caused global warming. Going to take a break. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of the program today. We're going to take one more phone call. Lenny in Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Lenny, are you there?
May have dropped him.
Okay, all right. So, Lenny, all right, we're going to close the phone lines here and just finish up the show here as well. Apparently, Goldman Sachs and other banks have been slapped with a multi-trillion-dollar lawsuit for rigging the markets. Been telling you all along they're rigging those markets to their own benefit and also to convince you the economy is doing really, really well. Yeah, so you're hungry and you're starving and you lost your home and your business. Look at the stock market. I mean, how can you look at the stock market and think that this economy isn't anything but wonderful? And this idea of using the stock numbers as a political banner goes all the way back to the Bill Clinton administration and the creation of that plunge protection team. And they just... You use huge amounts of money to supply and demand to run up the stock prices, and the underlying value of the stock doesn't support it, which means somewhere at some point when the system breaks, there's going to be a crash, and I think we're at hand right now. Speaking of stock, Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, just dumped about $43 million worth of company stock. Had to do a regulatory filing. Basically, he sold all the net shares he was awarded last week for his job performance. And it was a good time to dump the stock because Apple hit an all-time high on Tuesday. But a lot of people are scratching their head at why Tim Cook would be dumping so much of the stock only weeks before the launch of the new iPhone. Does he know something about the new iPhone the rest of us do not? Always a legitimate question here. Now, I've got to be very honest. Now that we were forced to upgrade, I like the iPhone 7. I love my iPhone 5. I do like the iPhone 7. I like the fact that it's actually waterproof, which will eliminate certain aspects as well. And we did get a sweet deal from AT&T. Okay, now, just a reminder again, tomorrow's show and Monday's show will be repeats. Claire and I are literally exhausted. We're at this 7 days a week constantly, and we need a little time away. So we're taking the Labor Day weekend. And our vacation starts just as soon as the out music plays on this. And I will be keeping an eye on the website, promoting member stories and a little bit of involvement there. But other than that, Claire and I are just going to go on out, and we're going to remind ourselves we do live in Hawaii. We're going to go on down to the beach, just have a little bit of relaxing fun, and try and let all this stuff, this insanity, the political insanity, just go away, because we're really running on burnout here. So thank you for your patience and your understanding that we need a little bit of time off. And there's the music. So we're going to sign off here until next Tuesday. We'll be back live next Tuesday. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got lots of interesting things to share with you. So have a really good Labor Day weekend. Be safe. Have fun. We'll see you Tuesday. Aloha, America.